I always thought the coldest place on earth was the high desert at dawn, until I sat in that courtroom listening to my wife of 23 years grind my reputation into dust. Hell, she didn't even look at me when she did it. She kept her eyes locked on the judge like he was the last man she needed to seduce. "My husband," she said, voice steady as a surgeon's hand, "doesn't deserve a penny. Not one. He chose the biker life over this marriage, over stability, over everything. He spent money behind my back, disappeared for days, lived like an outlaw while I held the home together." She paused. "Let it sink in." Then the knife twisted. "He's dangerous, Your Honor. Reckless. I fear what he might do if he's given any more power or resources." I sat there, spine straight, jaw tight, my cut folded across my lap like a flag at a funeral. The Iron Viper's patch stared up at me, that coiled steel serpent looking hungrier than I felt. And I was plenty damn hungry. For truth, for justice, for the chance to tell my side. But my lawyer had warned me, stay quiet. Let her burn herself out. We'll speak when it's our turn. Only our turn never came. The judge was one of those polished types, hair perfect, tie straight, expression carved out of stone. He listened to Marlene like she was a preacher and he was considering salvation. Every lie she spun dripped like poison into a well someone like me would never drink from. No patch-wearing biker wins a sympathy contest in front of the state. I watched her hands as she spoke. Soft hands. Expensive nails. Hands I'd once held under desert moons, under neon bar signs, under mornings when the world hurt too much to face alone. Hands I'd broken bones to protect. Now those same hands were signing my execution. When my lawyer stood to counter her claims, the judge cut him short. "We'll address financial divisions at the next hearing," he said. "For now, the court accepts Mrs. Maddox's statements as testimony." I felt the blow land deep in my rib cage, the kind you don't show pain from even when it steals your breath. I'd been stabbed before. This was worse. At least when a man sticks a knife in you, he's honest about it. The judge's gavel came down like a thunderclap. "We will reconvene in 30 days. Until then, temporary financial control remains with Mrs. Maddox." Translation: she gets everything, but you get nothing. When the room emptied, Marlene finally looked at me. Really looked. Not with fear, not with sadness. No, she wore a smile so thin and controlled it might as well have been carved from glass. "You never understood leverage," she whispered as she walked past me. "Now you'll learn." I sat there for a long moment, swallowing the rage that wanted to claw its way out of my chest. The courtroom buzz faded until it was just me, the empty bench, and the echo of her voice. She wanted me broke, disarmed, humiliated. But she'd forgotten something vital. Something men like me never forget. I wasn't built in courtrooms. I wasn't forged by laws or judges or any of the polished people who hid behind rules. My bones were hardened in fire under engines roaring at midnight beside men who would die for me and expect me to do the same. My life had been written on the back roads, not legal paper. And no one took everything from me without a fight. When I finally stepped outside, the sun punched through the clouds in jagged slivers. My bike waited at the curb, black paint shimmering like the hide of some restless beast. I ran my hand along the tank, feeling the familiar vibrations even before the engine started. Marlene thought she'd bled me dry. She thought wrong, because there was something she didn't know, something almost everyone had forgotten except a select few Iron Vipers who once sat in a circle and trusted one another more than their own blood. The safe, the one buried behind steel and concrete in the old machine shop on Rattlesnake Road, the one only 3 of us ever knew about. And the last time I checked, 2 of those men were dead. I swung my leg over the bike, fired the engine, and felt the rumble crawl up my spine. 30 days until the next hearing. 30 days until she delivered the final blow. But she wouldn't see it coming. Not the truth, not the money, not the revenge I had a rightful claim to. As I tore out of the courthouse parking lot, wind slashing across my face, one thought burned hotter than all the others. If she wanted war, I'd show her the kind that left scars on souls, the kind only bikers understood. The ride out to Rattlesnake Road felt like slipping back into a skin I thought I'd shed years ago. The asphalt unrolled beneath me, long and cracked, shaped by 1,000 summers of heat and neglect. The kind of road that didn't welcome you. It tolerated you, the way the outlaw life tolerates a man until he stops earning his place. I rode alone, engine growling like it had unfinished business of its own. Funny thing about a Harley, it doesn't care who you were yesterday. It cares who you are in the moment your hand hits the throttle. And in that moment, I wasn't a man being stripped bare by divorce court. I was Colt Maddox, Iron Viper's enforcer, a ghost they never managed to bury. The old machine shop sat 3 miles past the last of civilization, if you could call a half-dead gas station and a busted diner civilization. From the highway, the shop looked like a hunched animal, all rusted tin and busted windows. Most folks passing by would think it was abandoned. They weren't wrong, but they weren't right either, because a place only dies when you forget it. And I never forgot. I cut the engine and let silence take over, the kind that presses against your ears, thick and waiting. The desert wind carried that dry, metallic scent I always associated with regret. I pushed open the warped metal door, and it squealed like it hadn't been touched since the day everything fell apart. Inside, sunlight poured through cracks and holes, making stripes of gold dust that floated like memories refusing to settle. It was all still there. The old workbenches, the stripped-down engines, the faint smell of oil soaked deep into concrete. Hell, I could almost hear the laughter of the brothers who used to gather here, a mix of whiskey, adrenaline, and loyalty thicker than blood. But those days were ashes now. I walked past the back wall, boots echoing on the hollow floor. The safe wasn't hidden behind some cartoonish false panel. No, we were smarter than that. The Iron Vipers never relied on tricks. They relied on silence. Truth is, you could stand right in front of it and never notice a damn thing. The safe was built into the concrete foundation itself, 4 feet underground, encased in reinforced steel. The only entrance was through a maintenance pit we used to work on low-slung choppers. Anyone else would think it was just an old oil-change trench, but the bottom had a removable steel plate, flush as a tomb lid. I knelt down, fingertips tracing the grooves only 3 men in this world had ever known existed. Me, Stryker, and Bulldog. Stryker died in a crash 8 years ago. Rumor was he was drunk, but I never bought that. Bulldog took a bullet in a shootout with a rival club the year after. That left just me. Funny how the dead keep secrets better than the living. It took effort to pry the plate loose. It hadn't been touched in years. And when it finally gave way, a cloud of dust rose up like a spirit being freed. Beneath it sat the safe. Black steel. Scratched but solid, tougher than any of us ever were. My hands shook just slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what the box represented. The Viper's emergency fund, Black Ledger, insurance policy, blood money. All rolled into one. I entered the code Stryker and I picked the night we forged our pact. 6 numbers. A date most men would bury deep, but one I carried like a scar. The mechanism clicked. The door groaned open. Inside wasn't what most people would expect. Sure, there was money. Stacks of cash, bands yellowed with age, but still crisp where it counted. Enough to start a new life, burn an old one down, or buy yourself a piece of a kingdom if you knew which palms to grease. But the cash was secondary. What mattered was the folder. A simple manila folder, stained at the edges, filled with papers, receipts, photos. Things men were willing to kill for. Things men had killed for. I pulled it out, sat on the floor, and began flipping through its contents. At first, everything looked familiar. The old Viper accounts we kept off the books, lists of suppliers, bribes paid to cops who swore they never met us. Nothing surprising. But then I found something that didn't belong. A bank transaction. A wiring slip. Dated only 6 months before Marlene filed for divorce. My name wasn't on it, but hers was. And beneath her signature, a second name. One that made my stomach drop like a lead weight through water. Harlan Pierce, a former Viper, a rat in leather. The kind of man who shook your hand while measuring the exact length of the knife he planned to put in your back. I stared at their signatures, anger rising in me like a slow-burning fuse. Marlene hadn't just stabbed me in court. She'd partnered with a man who once tried to burn the Vipers from the inside out. She'd used club money, our money, to grease the wheels of her little execution plan. The betrayal hit me harder than any punch, harder than any boot, blade, or bullet. And suddenly, everything made sense. How she paid for that high-end attorney, how she bought a new house before the divorce even went through, how she walked into court so damn confident. She thought I was weak. She thought I had nothing left. She thought the past stayed buried. But she forgot what kind of man she married. I stood up, folder in hand, heart thundering as the pieces of a much bigger picture clicked into place. Someone from the old biker world had sold me out. And Marlene had signed the deal with a pen dipped in my blood. The safe hadn't just given me money. It had given me names, a trail, a reason, and a way to burn their entire scheme to the ground. I climbed out of the pit, sealing the safe behind me like a coffin. This wasn't just divorce anymore. This was war. And unlike Marlene, I knew how to fight dirty. The desert night has a way of peeling back the layers of a man. Out there, with nothing but the hum of my engine and a sky full of stars that don't give a damn whether you rise or die, the truth hits harder. And the truth was simple. Marlene didn't just turn on me. She partnered with the kind of snake even outlaws crossed the street to avoid. Harlan Pierce. Just thinking his name made my teeth grind. We patched in together back in the day, 2 young idiots believing we'd ride forever. But Harlan had ambition without honor, a toxic mix in the outlaw world. When the club split during the internal war, he tried to take the treasury, the guns, everything. He failed, ran, and vanished like smoke. Rumor was he got cozy with lawyers and businessmen who liked their sins handled by someone with no conscience. If Marlene went to him, she wasn't just divorcing me, she was weaponizing my past, and I wasn't about to let that stand. I rode toward the state line, heading for Needles, a town that never really woke up but somehow never slept. It was the kind of place where men like Harlan left footprints. They were just usually blood-shaped. I parked behind a dive bar called the Rusted Halo, a place where bikers, smugglers, truckers, and unregistered souls blended into a single mass of trouble. The neon sign flickered like it was fighting for its last breath. Inside, the air was thick with beer fumes, old smoke, and the faint scent of desperation. Good. Desperation loosens lips. A bartender I recognized, Judy, a woman with steel gray hair and the eyes of someone who'd seen too many cops and too few saints, looked up as I approached. "Well, if it isn't Colt Maddox," she said, drying a glass that didn't need drying. "Heard you were playing court games these days." I smirked. Trying something new doesn't suit me. "No," she said, leaning in. "It doesn't." Her gaze sharpened. "You here for trouble?" "I'm here for Harlan Pierce." The bar went quiet the way bars do when everyone suddenly remembers they have excellent hearing. Judy's jaw tightened. "Colt, that's a name better left buried." "Yeah," I said, "but someone dug him up, and I want to know why." She studied me a long moment. Finally, she jerked her head toward the back door. "Try Warehouse 6 near the rail yard. But be careful. Harlan's been running with men who don't ask questions. They just shoot." I nodded. "Wouldn't be the worst greeting I've had." She snorted. Still cocky. "Go. And Colt, don't die stupid." Outside, the night air hit like a slap. I rode slow, engine rumbling low through the industrial stretch of town. Warehouse 6 sat alone at the edge of the tracks, a massive corrugated tomb humming with faint electricity. A black SUV was parked out front. Expensive, clean, the kind of vehicle used by people who don't want fingerprints on their sins. I parked a block away, cut the engine, and approached on foot. The shadows hugged me like old friends. I peered through a gap in the metal siding. Inside, 3 men stood around a folding table. One I didn't recognize. One I did. Harlan. Older now, thinner. Eyes as slick and empty as oil on asphalt. He wasn't the kind of predator who hunted with strength. He hunted with manipulation, with secrets. The third man was the surprise. A lawyer named Carrington. A smug prick who handled Marlene's case. Suddenly, everything connected. The money transfers, the confidence she walked into court with, the way the judge seemed swayed before hearing anything. They were all in on it. A coordinated hit on my future. I slid inside through a side door and let my presence be known with a single sentence. "Nice party. Shame I wasn't invited." 3 heads snapped toward me. Harlan's face drained of color. "Colt," he whispered, voice shaking. "Jesus. How did you—" I stepped forward, boots echoing like war drums. "You stole from the Vipers once. Now you're stealing from me. Didn't learn your lesson?" The unknown man reached for his gun. I moved first. I grabbed his wrist, twisted, heard the crack, and sent him to the ground with a grunt. His pistol skittered across the floor. Carrington raised his hands immediately. Smart man. Harlan, though, tried to bluff. "You don't scare me anymore, Colt. The club isn't here to back you. You're alone." I smiled a smile that never reached my eyes. "That's the thing," I said. "When I come alone, that's when you should worry." He backed up, stumbling over a chair. "This wasn't personal. Marlene came to me. She said she wanted out. Wanted leverage." "She paid you with Viper money," I growled. "Money that belonged to men who bled for it. Money you had no right touching." Carrington swallowed hard. "Look, Colt, this is a misunderstanding." I slammed my fist onto the table, rattling the whole warehouse. "Save it. I want facts." I spent the next 20 minutes peeling the truth out of them. No blades, no bullets, just pressure, and the kind of stare that lets a man know his soul is being measured. Piece by piece, they confessed. Marlene hired Harlan to dig up dirt. Harlan used old Viper accounts to bribe Carrington and certain court officials. The goal? Strip me of assets so they could seize holdings linked to my past, ones worth far more than our marital estate. They weren't trying to ruin me. They were trying to rob me blind. "And the money transfers," I said, pulling the folder from my jacket and tossing it onto the table. "Explain those." Harlan's eyes widened. You opened the safe?" I leaned in until our foreheads almost touched. "You should have remembered, brother. Dead men tell no tales, but safes do." He broke then, fully. He told me everything. Names, dates, amounts, leverage they planned to use. The judge they were trying to sway. They thought they were writing my obituary. Instead, they wrote my victory. But I wasn't finished. I crouched in front of Harlan, looking him dead in the eye. "You're going to help me fix this," I said. "You're going to undo every lie, every bribe, every backroom deal. You're going to clear my name in court. And if I don't," he whispered. I smiled again, slow, steady, and cold as desert night. "Then you'll wish the vipers had killed you years ago." He nodded, fear pouring off him like sweat. Carrington agreed too, voice trembling. Amazing how fast men cooperate when their worst nightmare is standing right in front of them. By the time I left the warehouse, I had everything I needed: documents, recordings, statements, and 2 terrified men motivated by the kind of fear only truth and violence combined can produce. I stepped outside, inhaling the cool night air. My bike gleamed under the moonlight, waiting like a patient beast. Tomorrow, I'd return to the courthouse. Tomorrow, the scales would tip. And Marlene? She had no idea the avalanche headed her way. The courthouse looked different the second time around. Maybe it was the way the morning sun struck its concrete ribs, making it look less like a building and more like a fortress waiting to be breached. Or maybe it was just me. Last time I walked through those doors, I was a man cornered, bleeding dignity, carrying anger like a chainsaw inside my chest. But today I walked in carrying truth like a weapon. I parked my bike right in front, letting the rumble echo off the glass facade for a couple extra seconds. Let everyone inside know Colt Maddox had arrived. Not the broken husband they thought they could gut, not the outlaw they thought was done fighting. The man who walked into the courthouse that morning was built from steel and scars. People stared as I entered, some out of fear, some out of curiosity, all out of judgment. My cut hung heavy across my shoulders, the Iron Viper's emblem stitched bright enough to make the bailiff flinch. Good. Let them flinch. I headed to courtroom 2B, boots echoing down the hallway like a slow drum roll. But when I stepped inside, Marlene was already there, dressed immaculate, as always, hair perfect, nails sharp, face painted with the confidence of someone who believed she'd already won. When she saw me, something flickered in her eyes. Not fear, not yet. More like annoyance that the corpse she'd expected to step over was moving under its own power. Her lawyer, Carrington, didn't meet my gaze. He stared at the table, the floor, his hands anywhere but me. Good. A guilty man always knows not to lock eyes with the executioner. The judge entered and the room rose. I stayed standing a beat longer just to watch Marlene stiffen. I wanted her to feel the shift in the air, the weight of a storm she never saw coming. "Mrs. Maddox," the judge began, "today we will review the financial disclosures and determine preliminary asset division." Marlene sat straighter, ready for her victory lap. That's when I spoke. "Your Honor," I said, voice calm but edged with iron. "Before we begin, I have evidence regarding financial misconduct, fraud, perjury, and attempted asset theft." You could have heard a pin drop in that moment. The judge narrowed his eyes. "Mr. Maddox, this is highly irregular. What evidence?" I placed the folder from the Viper's safe on the table. Then another folder, one filled with signed statements from Harlan, Pierce, and Carrington, recorded confessions, financial transfers, documents showing bribes, kickbacks, and the entire play-by-play of how they planned to rob me blind, using the divorce as their smokescreen. Carrington's face turned the color of spoiled milk. Marlene's turned to stone. The judge opened the first folder. His eyebrows shot up. As he flipped page after page, his expression shifted from curiosity to concern to anger. Finally, he lifted his gaze. "Mrs. Maddox, is there an explanation for these bank transfers to Mr. Pierce? These payments to court intermediaries? These communications discussing falsified claims about your husband's income and behavior?" Marlene opened her mouth, but no sound came out. For the first time in years, she didn't have words ready. She looked at Carrington like he might save her, but he simply sank into his seat, the embodiment of defeat. The judge's voice dropped, deep and cold. "Mrs. Maddox, this court does not tolerate fraud. These documents suggest a deliberate conspiracy to manipulate legal proceedings and deprive Mr. Maddox of lawful assets." She tried to speak again. "Your Honor, this isn't... Colt must have..." But lies fall apart when they meet the truth head on. And I was the truth today. The judge hammered his gavel once. It echoed like thunder. "I am freezing all proceedings. Furthermore, I am ordering an immediate investigation into these transactions. Mr. Carrington, you are to surrender your license pending review. Mrs. Maddox, you are advised to obtain separate legal counsel. You may be facing criminal charges." Silence. Heavy. Final. You could feel the room shift, the power she held evaporating like gasoline on hot asphalt. Then the judge turned to me. "Mr. Maddox, given this evidence, the court restores full financial access to you. Additionally, The court will consider punitive adjustments to compensate for the attempted fraud. I nodded once, steady. Marlene stared at me with something new in her eyes. Not anger, not arrogance, not victory, fear. Real, trembling fear. She whispered, "Colt, please, you don't understand." I leaned close enough for only her to hear. "No, Marlene, you didn't understand. You thought you could burn a man who walked through fire long before he met you." Her eyes glistened. Maybe tears, maybe regret. It didn't matter anymore. The judge dismissed us, calling for officers to escort Carrington out. Harlan would face his own reckoning later. I'd already ensured that. The club world has its own justice, and he'd violated laws no courtroom could enforce. As I walked out of the courthouse, sunlight washed over me like a baptism I didn't ask for, but accepted anyway. My bike waited at the curb, engine quiet but ready. I swung a leg over and took a long breath. This wasn't victory. This was balance restored. As the engine roared to life beneath me, I thought about the safe, the secrets, the men who built them, the woman who betrayed me, and the path that led here. Marlene wanted to strip me of every last penny. Instead, she stripped herself of everything. Truth isn't gentle. It cuts deeper than vengeance. And today, truth did the killing for me. I pulled onto the highway, letting the wind take whatever pieces of the past still clung to me. Ahead of me, open road. Behind me, ashes. And for the first time in a long damn while, I felt free.